I'm out on the road traveling this week, but I didn't want to let that be a reason to not get video content up, especially about something I've been giving a lot of thought and attention to lately, which is the mechanics and techniques of mind control or thought reform or brainwashing or whatever you want to call it. It's kind of funny. Somebody pointed out to me recently that we use these terms and expressions to describe the ways that organizations, groups, or individuals will get us to think the way they want us to think. But in another sense, it's really just words that are used to describe us making bad decisions or bad judgments. And that's kind of how this works in real life, is we are convinced or deceived or made to feel a certain way by these mechanisms or control ideas. And so we make bad judgments or bad decisions, and that's really what it comes down to. I thought it might be interesting to talk about a particular aspect of this, which is what is called the thought-stopping cliche or the thought-terminating cliche. And this is an expression of something that Robert Lifton came up with. He wrote in, I've got a quote here, he wrote in his book back in 1961, he wrote a book called Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism, a study of brainwashing. And Lifton was one of the original groundbreaking pioneers in this field. And he wrote, "The language of the totalist environment is characterized by the thought-terminating cliche. The most far-reaching and complex of human problems are compressed into brief, highly reductive, definitive-sounding phrases, easily memorized and easily expressed. These become the start and finish of any ideological analysis." Now, in modern terms, or in looking at how these come about now, you might think of memes that you see on Facebook or all over the internet. Almost every one of them is a thought-terminating or a thought-stopping cliche. It allows you to basically justify or stop thinking about something anymore, because the cliche just justifies or gives you a reason for something, and then you don't have to look at it anymore. You don't have to think about it anymore. And these are expressed in so many different ways. There's some examples here. It doesn't have to be that the thought-stopping cliche is not true. It could be a statement of truth. It's how it's used, and it's how the individual himself uses it in his own thinking. Because if it stops any further critical analysis or any further critical thinking about a particular subject, or stops an argument in its tracks, then you're dealing with a thought-stopping cliche. Examples are everything happens for a reason. Don't judge. Why? Because I said so. Right? Just no more thinking about it. And there are so many of them. In religion, these exist. You could have the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. That's it, right? It's just, what are we going to do about this situation, or how do we deal with, this situation of poverty amongst the lower classes, right? Well, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. In other words, that's it. That's the end of the conversation, when it should be the beginning of the conversation. Or God works in mysterious ways, right? Only God can judge, or God has a plan, right? Now, it may well be that God does have a plan. I don't know, but I do know that if you use that in such a way as to, end the conversation and cease working out real-world solutions for things, then you are using that as a thought-stopping cliche. Now, Scientology, to bring this to the subject of the video, uses thought-stopping cliches all throughout its materials. And I'll give you some examples of that, because I thought it might be of interest, and it's an interesting way to look at it, as to how it is that Scientology can control its members through some of these. One of them that they use, and this is actually a fairly big one, is he's PTS. Now, PTS stands for Potential Trouble Source. And that is a term or a label that is used. And I've used the word labeling to describe thought-stopping cliches in the past. I've written articles and made videos talking about the dangers of labeling. And what I was using labeling before I was familiar with the term thought-stopping cliche. PTS, Potential Trouble Source, is a label that's given to somebody in Scientology, which means that they are connected to somebody who, a suppressive person, someone who is trying to squash or stop them or impede their ability to survive or get along in life. And according to the theory of Scientology, when you are PTS, it means that you will be a trouble source. You cause trouble. You make problems. You are somebody who has problems. You have issues. You get sick. You have accidents. You are not getting along well in life. You have bad luck. You have bad things happen to you just out of the blue or all of a sudden. Anybody who gets into an accident for any reason is labeled PTS. Anybody who has a string of bad luck happen to them is labeled PTS. It's a way of not only giving a label to someone, but actually assigning blame to them within the Scientology context because they've done something to somehow put themselves into a position where they are being suppressed or held down by some suppressive person or some suppressive group or organization, right? For example, anybody who listens to my videos, because I am a suppressive person according to Scientology, will be PTS. And therefore, in the world of Scientology, if you have an accident, you break your arm, and they were to sit you down and do an interview with you and ask, well, have you been connected to anybody who is anti-Scientology or against Scientology or trying to give you a hard time or disagreeing with, Scientology beliefs in your life in some way, and the guy were to say, well, I watch these videos by Chris Shelton, they'd go, oh, well, there you go. You're PTS. That's it. End of story, right? And it ceases any more thought on the process of, why did this guy get into an accident, or why did he, have this bad luck, or why is he looking at these videos, right? Or why is he questioning what's going on in Scientology? Suddenly all that gets parked because he's PTS, right? And it's sort of the end of thought on that particular subject matter, right? And this is very, very commonly used in the world of Scientology to make a person feel that they are responsible for the bad things that have happened to them or any, unfortunate circumstances or when the church is coming down on them and making them, go along with what the church says to do, right? The church will put this label on the person, well, you're PTS, right? So as to get the guy to conform with what the church wants them to do, right? Because the church has this label that means that it's the SP, it's the suppressive person who's at fault for the bad things, and the guy needs to disconnect from that SP in order for the bad things to stop happening to him. And in the case of somebody watching my videos and getting the truth about Scientology, well, they need to stop doing that because they're PTS, right? And so that's a way for them to shut down any thinking that the guy might be doing about Scientology because, because of his connection to me. Even if that connection is as tenuous as, watching videos on the internet, Scientology will still insist that that's a connection. He's connected to me through the videos, and he has to stop watching, right? So that is a very that's a very specific thought-stopping cliche that Scientology uses to control its members. Another one is that's just black PR. Okay, so there's a label that's given to any statement or remark, true or not, that's anti-Scientology or anything that is against Scientology's leaders or executives or staff or members or anything that is anti in any way or could be construed as anti in any way is just given this label. That's just black PR, right? And that ends the conversation right there. It's done. We're done talking about it. no more, we're not going to take it up, we're not going to deal with it, we're not going to allay your fears. Like, for example, the guy says, he walks in, let's say he's a Scientologist, been a Scientologist for a few years, and he reads on the internet, or hears somehow that David Miscavige is beating up on people, or that Scientology is really concentrating on just making money and not delivering services, which is true. And the guy sees that this seems to be true because every time he is called by the local church, it's not to see how he's doing on his Scientology services or ask him how his life is going. It's to ask him to come into the Church of Scientology for a fundraising event and to come and give money. Or they're just calling him directly, asking him for his credit card number. And this happens all the time in Scientology. So he sees that there's some truth to this statement that Scientology is very money-oriented. And he goes in and he says, I'm really concerned about this because I thought we were here to, save the world and clear the planet and make everything great. And instead, every time somebody from the church talks to me, they're just talking to me about money. And I really don't like that. Oh, well, that's just black PR. You just have black PR, right? Bam, that's the stop. That's the thought-stopping cliche that's fed to him. It shuts down any further discussion on the matter. And now, in terms of his complaints, right? Because now the focus of attention is on why does he have that black PR? What is all that black PR about? Why are you listening to black PR? Why are you looking at black PR? Why are you giving me your black PR, right? The staff member would say, I don't want your black PR, right? Like it's some, radioactive, rock that he's throwing at the guy, right? So it stops the conversation. And this was one of the ways I was shut down. I was trying to bring up my concerns to the church when I was having them, when I was still connected into the church and wasn't yet declared a suppressive person. And in fact, giving the church black PR, going to somebody in the church, like an official, or somebody who works in the Office of Special Affairs or something like that, and saying these black PR statements and putting them out there is one of the fastest ways to get declared a suppressive person in Scientology. You just have to say a few of these things, and they'll shut you down. And if you don't stay shut down, then they will disconnect you. They will declare you a suppressive person for spreading black PR, right? They won't address the concern, and this is the point I want to highlight about this, is they won't address the concern, they won't take it up with you, they won't try to deal with it, or they'll give you a very perfunctory address, right? You might say, well, the church is very money motivated, and I've seen this, and I experienced this, and I don't like it. Oh, well, you just have black PR because that's, we're clearly not just money motivated because, look at all of the humanitarian work that we do. And the guy could go, well, yeah, but all I ever see are photo ops. I don't ever read about it in the news. I don't ever see it in any positive media. I don't see the results. Can I see, where my money is going? Is there any transparency to any of that? Wham, second guy, that the guy doesn't accept those perfunctory attempts to shut him down, then that's it. That's all the church has, and then they'll simply declare you a suppressive person and get rid of you. And that's happening more and more these days as more and more of the people in Scientology are questioning what's going on. Now, these thought-stopping cliches, of course, don't just exist in the world of Scientology. I gave examples of some of these. We see these all the time, right? But in the real world, thought-stopping cliches can be dealt with, right? There are ways of dealing with these things. You don't have to shut down conversation or critical thinking by just spewing thought-stopping cliches. And for people who use these, it takes effort and caring to break through somebody who's using thought-stopping cliches in order to get to what is actually underlying them, what's the actual thought or problem or idea that the person has. And so I wanted to sort of put out there, not just as part of this video, not just how thought-stopping cliches are used, but also how to deal with them. Because it's been an effort of mine, especially lately, in some of my recent videos and interviews and whatnot, I've been talking about how to get through to people in destructive groups like Scientology and other groups where people use thought-stopping cliches. This is just as applicable. It takes work, it takes effort. It's easy to just let the conversation die at a thought-stopping cliche, right? But if you care about the person and you want to, or you care about the subject at hand or the issue that's being talked about, then you want to go further than that. I am just as guilty as anybody else of falling into the trap of using these, right? Recently, somebody was actually confronting and giving me a hard time on the subject of Donald Trump, right? And there was this sort of meme, floating around about, Trump and Trump being like Adolf Hitler and this sort of thing. And I didn't particularly consider that I was talking about that subject as a thought-stopping cliche. Oh, Trump is just like Hitler, right? Although it could be used that way. But it occurred to me in talking about this and dealing with this that in order to break through that meme thinking, that Facebook kind of thinking, it requires compassion and understanding and respect. In order to get through to somebody who's using this, whether they're in Scientology or anywhere, whether you're having political discussions or social issue discussions, as well as talking to somebody who's in a destructive cult, you have to have care. You have to have some compassion for the person that you're talking to, and you have to understand where they're coming from, because let's say they throw this out, right? You have to go, okay, now we're going to continue this discussion. We're going to keep talking about this. I'm not going to stop at that thought-stopping cliche, and sort of get them talking more. You're going to ask them questions. You're going to try to get more information out of them. And an important part of this is giving them a certain degree of respect. And a point that, and this has been really difficult for me sometimes too, but in giving the person respect, it's not the same thing as giving their thought-stopping cliche or their idea respect. It's okay to respect somebody who has different beliefs from you. It's okay to respect the fact that they have those beliefs or those ideas without necessarily agreeing with or giving dignity or respect to the idea itself, right? Because that sometimes can simply be impossible. There's just no way I will ever respect the idea of racism or bigotry or misogyny or let's send all of the Mexicans back down to Mexico and build a wall and keep them all out. I will never respect that idea. But I know for a fact that if I'm going to change the hearts and minds of the people who have that idea, I'm going to have to find out why they think that. And it's probably going to be on an individual basis, because trying to deal with mobs of people who have these racist, bigoted ideas doesn't tend to work so well, right? Which seems to be what politics is all about these days. So in dealing with somebody who is in a destructive cult like Scientology, if you come across as antagonistic or hostile to them or their beliefs or their ideas, you're not going to get anywhere in trying to convince them to change their mind. But if you come across with respect and treat them with dignity in the same way you would want to be treated with something that is important to you, then you have a chance of getting through to them. And this is a question I'm asked all the time. How do I convince my friend, my mother, my father, my son, my daughter to get out of Scientology? How do I get them to listen to me? And this is probably the first and most important point, is you have to afford them the respect and the dignity that you want to get from them. You have to give it to them, right? As hard as that can be, or as hard as that can seem to be, that is absolutely required as the very first step. So I wanted to make that point. And with that, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you very much for listening to what I had to say, and I hope this was helpful to you. And I'll see you next time.